So one of my dearest friends surprised me with a present, and it's an old, beautiful book, and it's a collection of poetry by William Wordsworth, um, and he was an English poet. Uh, he wrote at the turn of the century, the 1700s into the 1800s. He was a romantic poet. A few notable figures known as like the Romantics were Wordsworth and Coleridge, Samuel Taylor Coleridge, um, William Blake, who was a little bit older, Lord Byron, a little bit younger, John Keats and Shelley, younger still. Um, some of my favorite, they're one of my favorite groups of writers and thinkers. And what interests me about them uh, is how they're all kind of lumped together, but they had these differences. Um, William Blake was like mystical. Coleridge was metaphysical. Wordsworth is philosophical. Byron is satirical. Shelley was radical, and Keats kind of wrote about love. There's a real broad strokes because they all wrote in really different ways, but in general, um, the thing that I think brings them all together is that they all wrote with a sense of wonderment. Um, you get this feeling that they were astonished with the world that they lived in. And it's very joyous. I like all of them, different for different reasons. But I want to tell you about just one poem by William Wordsworth. It's a few lines written above Tintern Abbey. The title's actually a little bit longer. I don't know the whole thing, but most kind of simply known as Tintern Abbey, and people should know what you're talking about. And I don't really know the whole historical context of the poem. It doesn't matter. It's this kind of walking poem. He's walking a very, very long way, and he's revisiting a place. So he's the poem is him walking and observing the things that he sees, and they're things that he's seen before. And what makes it interesting, I think, is not necessarily just the images that he evokes, but how he manages to make those images very philosophical. How they're kind of these experiences that really affect him. And the writing, it's written, it's called blank verse, which I don't really know what that means, but it doesn't have rhyme to it. It's not like rhyming couplets or just like a poem that rhymes. Instead, instead he uses repetition. He'll repeat words, and it's a literary device that really helps with emphasis, and also a lot of poets that repeat words. It's sort of a trick. It helps poems to become memorable, which is one of the things that is kind of important to a poet. And he has these details these descriptions that he uses, um, that I really, really like. Um, so he'll describe things that aren't there. So he'll say the houseless woods. I think it was great. Um, or sounds that aren't there. So he mentions the quiet of the sky. Another part he says the silent smoke. So like looking off in the distance and seeing smoke rising. You could argue a very unnecessary detail, but it's great. But I would like to maybe just read a little bit of the poem, because it's kind of hard to describe it otherwise. It's not like a book. So I'll read a little bit, so hopefully you get an idea, like the rhythm, the way the way that it's put together. So the poem's Tintern Abbey, and this is how it starts. And think about the repetition. So 5 years have passed, 5 summers with the length of 5 long winters. And again I hear these waters rolling from their mountain springs with a sweet inland murmur. Once again do I behold these steep and lofty cliffs, which on a wild, secluded scene impress thoughts of a more deep seclusion, and connect the landscape with the quiet of the sky. The day has come when I again repose here under this dark sycamore, and view these plots of cottage ground and these orchard tufts, which at this season with their unripe fruits among the woods and copses lose themselves, nor with their green and simple hue disturb the wild green landscape. And once again I see the hedgerows, hardly hedgerows, little lines of sportive wood run wild, pastoral farms green to the very door, and wreaths of smoke sent up in silence from among the trees. With some uncertain notice, as might seem, of vagrant dwellers in the houseless woods, or of some hermit's cave where by his fire the hermit sits alone. And it goes on from there, but I think you can get an idea of the rhythm, hopefully, and how those repetitions kind of sink in and start beating on their own. So, I don't know, I feel pretty good. I just read a poem. So I'll kind of wrap up there. I don't want to screw it up. Hopefully you liked it. It's everything that he writes is really great. The prelude is like a little book. I might talk about it later. But it's always kind of nice to just get like one of those big, thick, major works or something. Anyway, that's that. Thank you for watching. Leave a comment if you want. Praise is always nice. Thank you. Bye.